Hi, this is Liz, and welcome to my podcast, Spiritually Speaking with Liz. Today, I've got another fabulous guest and a true synchronistic guest on my part, as you'll learn. So I'm joined by Vicki Rebecca. So Vicki is a psychotherapist and a wellness and spiritual expert. She runs a successful private hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming practice that includes one-to-one therapies in person and online, thanks to the glories of Zoom, classes, retreats, live intensives, books and products since 1999. So this lady knows what she's talking about. Since 2003, she has put that practice into her retreats. So she's been all over the world to Egypt, India, Turkey, and even the sacred sites of Scotland, which you'll hear from a gorgeous accent is where she's from. She's written a really good book called The Me I Want to Be, Simple Shifts to Authentic Wellbeing. Now, it's a really informative book, I find, and we'll swing back round to this because it's the whole Egyptian thing I love at the beginning of each chapter. But anyway, we'll come back to that. And she's currently written a book, which will be released soon, but I'm not going to tell you the title of that just yet until we meet Vicki. So Vicki, hi, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Liz. It's wonderful to be here with you today, chatting, to see your beautiful face again. It's just amazing that whenever it was 2014, 15 that we met in India and we spoke about doing something together. And here we are,
Wow.
4 years post-pandemic and just having found each other again. I think that's
I love
so.
it. I think, yeah, you're one of my prize synchronicities, I'd say, because like you say, 2015, we met, we chatted. Were you running a course then, or were you on one?
I think I
Retreat?
did a tour and a retreat that year, or maybe that was the year I was looking into it. I can't remember.
It was, that's right. You were looking into it because we were talking and we both have the love of the same Tali man where we used to go for breakfast. And then we went back in 2020 and we were sat in one of the restaurants on the front and you walked past and Kev said, I'm sure that's that lady. I'm sure that's that lady. And you turned around and went, oh my God, it is. And so we caught up again and luckily swapped numbers. So we were able to stay in touch from that. But yeah, it's another wonder of India, isn't it? The joys.
I was just thinking that's. I remember someone said to me before I went to. So I was in India in 1980, the very first time,
Wow.
where I had a completely different life back then, and I never quite made it to Agra, which was one of the big reasons for me going there. And in fact, I didn't get to Agra until 2020.
Same.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you remember, we'd got a friend with us and
Yeah,
he wanted to do the Golden Triangle and we'd never done it. Been going to India over 23 years and we'd never been. So yeah, we did the same.
that's amazing. So yeah, that was beautiful, that whole trip. So I had a 44-year gap in my India story, if you like. When I went there in 1980 and didn't tick all the boxes, I promised myself I would go back one day. And the going back one day was the first time I met you over there. And then I think there was another couple of years where I did retreats. And then, of course, 2020, I came back just days before lockdown. I guess you must have
same. Yeah.
done the same.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's synchronistic. You mentioned my first book, The Me I Want to Be, which is a self-help book. But that's one of the synchronicities I'd like to share with you today, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So this was my very first book, and it was a combination of emails and articles and short stories I'd written for clients over the years. And I had no clue about publishing, how to do it. So I'd written out to a few friends and said, does anyone know someone that's published a book that might help me? And so I sent 5 emails from that question, and I got one reply back. So to give it some context, that book had a rather large preface. It was almost the size of a chapter. And in the preface was a story about my previous life. So before becoming a therapist, I had been a runaway. I ended up in London, and in the 70s and 80s in London, I was a page 3 girl, and I guess some of your listeners won't even know what that is.
No.
So a glamour model, shall we say. And I became a heroin addict, and I used heroin for 10 years. And the turnaround moment, people speak about that moment when your life turns around. It was typically when I reached rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in my life, out of nowhere, completely unexpected, a voice said to me, "You can be born again."
Right.
And it was really on from that moment, Liz, that my life turned on its heel. I didn't just stop like that. It took another 2-3 years after that. And it was then that I left London, came back here to Scotland, and my path became a totally different one. But already during my period back here in Scotland, becoming a therapist, there had been a couple of newspaper articles, exposes, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, so they're not getting to do that again. I'm going to own it and put it out there first. So that
Good
was
for you.
it was at the beginning of the book. So this one guy who wrote back to me said, "I don't know anything about self-help books. You can try this website, but I'm super interested in your life story.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever come to Glasgow?" So synchronicity one, I was on the train to Glasgow when I got that email.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh, so he was a film producer, and well, he is a film producer still. And I was on the way to Glasgow my daughter was at uni down there. So I said, "Yeah, are you free? I'm on my way." And his partner, my daughter, and I met in a Costa Coffee in Sauchiehall Street. And so the guys were both my age, and my daughter was, I don't know, 20 or something like that. And so she kind of sat back from the situation and watched the three of us get so excited
Mm-hmm.
as I spoke about, London in the 70s and 80s. And then the guys then said to me, "Oh, that's not a book, Vicky, it's a film."
Yes.
Because
Yes.
very colorful time. And one of the guys, who's my friend still today, said to me, write me an A to Z of your life so I can pitch it as a movie.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter and I went for a pizza afterwards, and you could have scraped us off the ceiling. We were
Yeah.
like, oh, we're going to be like the Kardashians and all that. I did this really super quick A to Z, wrote it off, and didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. So being me, I just, "Hey, did you not like it?" Phoned him up and asked him that. And he said, no, it wasn't that. You just didn't dig deep enough.
Ooh.
And I said, well, I kind of told you that. I wanted to put this book out first. This is
Mm-hmm.
who I am now. And I don't want to be known as the woman who.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of that going on. There's something about a wrestling match. I don't know if you heard about it. Just
No.
the other day, where the wrestler became known as the wrestler who took her top off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, we've still got miles to go and all that stuff. So he said, take the preface out, and that's what I did. And I published The Me I Want to Be. But him saying to me, you haven't dug deep enough, that was I guess, in activation. And I remember sitting in my garden there with my head in my hands thinking, how can I write this book? How can I write, who I am now, who I am today, some of the stuff I did in the past? How can I reconcile it? I'm not a victim. I'm not apologetic for, but I didn't know how to marry it together.
Yeah, I understand that.
So that's sent, ask and the universe will give you.
Mm.
So it sent me off on a journey. So I published the first book, and then things started happening in my life, like the karmic bus hit me full on in the face. I went into a bit of a dark night. I met someone that people you could refer to as the dark angel, the one that pokes the darkest shadows in your field, so this stuff comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go to India that winter. That next winter, I stayed here and I meditated. I mean, I worked 4 or 5 hours a day on the stuff that relationship brought up.
Mm-hmm.
And when the spring came, the book just poured out of my soul. It was like,
wow. So once you'd cleared through, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So that was fantastic. And so, you and I were working where we're always, or the goal is awareness and self-knowledge and all that. But during that period of time, during that writing, I remembered and realized things about my life that I did not know about myself before.
Really?
Yeah, really. It was, actually, sometimes we know something, but we kind of know it here, like on the periphery of consciousness, and it takes a big boot to come along and make it see it fully on our face. But yeah, it was incredible how the process of writing brought memories and realizations. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I bet that was very cathartic in itself. Just having that, like you say, we can all be very matter of fact. This happened here, this happened there, this happened there. But when we start to bring that together and allow the emotions to come in, then poof, it's very powerful, very emotive, very we're digging very deep, aren't we, once we get to that level, and going down to the places where we've just skimmed over. We've just, like skimmed over with a nice bit of wallpaper when it wanted, digging out and replastering.
Yeah, completely. So yeah, I would recommend writing. I hope in the future that my work's going to progress into something where I can really work with that story healing idea.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it will. Yeah.
Yeah. And that we can just speak our truth, warts and all, without fear of judgment or anything like that, in safe spaces. And years now, I've been a therapist since 1999, and it's always the places where there's that internal conflict that causes the problems in our life. And sometimes we just don't know what it is. And I see people held frozen in an erroneous belief or something like that for years sometimes. Or sometimes it just takes a gentle listener to sort of signpost them on the way. But for me, writing the book was amazing. And so I started sharing it with girlfriends very tentatively at first. We were on retreat. There were 4 of us in a Greek island, and the first person, it was still in a bit of paper with a pen. The first person who read it, she said, I was up all night crying, listening to your story. And for me, even with all the therapy experience, and everything, you know, in the end of the day, it doesn't matter what our training is, we're still ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, is she talking about me? What is she talking about? What is it that was so harrowing? Because when it's your life, you're in it, and you
Yeah.
have to normalize it to survive.
That's the key word, isn't it? You normalize it. So then when other people, you know, it's like kids that have grown up missing something out of their life. They don't know that they're missing it until it's pointed out to them, because that
That's
was their
right.
norm, wasn't it?
That's right. And those are the hardest ones to heal, because there isn't a model for you. You don't know how to copy that because you've never experienced it before.
Mm-hmm.
It just was missing,
Mm-hmm.
like you say. But it was in those moments, right? So that was 2016. So this book's been a long time coming. So there it was. And seeing the reaction of the other woman, that made me realize this book has to be written.
Mm-hmm.
I still had a lot of fear and worry. And then, you know, I'm busy, life gets in the way. So it gets put to one side again and again until I think I finished editing over a year ago. But my mom was dying, and again, I put it to the side, and it's only now. I think I also had some concern that my parents might feel bad for some of the things.
Yeah, I understand that.
And I didn't, because, you know, they couldn't have changed anything. You know, your path is your path. And
Yeah, but that shows the lovely person you are, that some people don't consider that, do they, and just go headlong into it. So I think that's very thoughtful on your part for them, because they don't, what people have to remember is they don't have the tools and the skill set that you have.
That's right.
To have dealt with it.
Yeah. So I'm now there, and we're going to publish in September equinox.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And the first book came out on a spring, on the solstice, summer solstice.
I wonder if that means I've got 2 more to write.
I think so. I was just going to say, I think definitely so. Definitely so. Can I take you back to that point where you heard that voice? So you were as the addict, and you got to that point, you got to your lowest level, and that voice came in. At that time, who was that voice, or what was that voice to you?
Well, that's the thing, Liz. I didn't know, because I didn't have a belief system in place that would give me the answer to the question you just asked.
Mm-hmm.
When I was very young, before I went to London, I was always interested in esoteric things, tarot cards, and even when I first went to London, astral traveling was the thing then. Mm-hmm. But I had no religious or other beliefs. And that was what made it all the more astonishing for me, because it felt to me to be not me. It was another. And it was such a strong resonating voice. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the whole shivers and every cell in your body changes. And I knew that it was something different, something I'd never experienced before, that it was important, but I did not know what. But it was, in fact, the beginning of a story like that. So that happened, and that was a singular event. And other experiences, similar experiences, didn't happen until I left London, which was in 1987. I came back here to Scotland and went to university, and it took me 3 years to get fully clean. I did a slow withdrawal of methadone, and during that period I started meditating, which I think that it was my mother. She dragged me along, And my mother was always very ahead of her time. She did Reiki and she was a vegetarian, and she dragged me along. And honestly, I can't even remember meditating, but I discovered during lockdown, like a lot of people, that I've got ADHD, but that highly functioning part of that single-mindedness would allow me to absolutely meditate twice a day if that's what I was telling myself I had to do. And so I did, and that was hugely healing. But then from about, I think about then, I just started having these dreams and guidances to go into the forest and hug that tree. Not any tree, but that tree. And I had, it was almost like an internal movie playing in my head. And I don't know what I think of it. Maybe now I think that was a lot of the thought forms releasing from my field. I really don't know, but it was like I had a guidance from somewhere else, another dimension, or whatever you want to call that. That was definitely happening for me and happened for many years. It was like I was put on a training course.
Yes.
Yeah, and sometimes I was like, I don't want to do that training course. That's not me. I'm going to be a psychotherapist, going to be like, don't tell me how to do spirit releasement and stuff. That doesn't look good on the website. No. There it was, and I could not get away from it. It's really quite incredible when you think about it.
It's amazing how we think that we have all this free will, and to a point we do, but we're quite strongly guided, aren't we? And I think a lot of the time people spend the time in the blinkers and they don't want to stay, and some people stay in blinkers, don't they, because they don't want to see, so the fear keeps them in here. But I think once you take the blinkers off and look, the signs are all around us. Like my mentor used to say to me, I think you're waiting for a big neon billboard and it's not going to come, Lizzy.
That's right.
I think I was expecting, something big like that. What was it then why particularly psychotherapy? What was it? Had you been to psychotherapy and that's what helped you, or there was just a pull?
It was pull, a series of serendipitous events, if you like. So I did a law degree when I came back to Aberdeen.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
No, it doesn't really seem a likely topic. But when I first went into recovery, I was conscious I'd left school at 15, and I thought, oh, I'm going to do a degree. What will I do? Oh, I'll do law. That's a challenge. And because now I realize with the ADHD, I knew I had to get something to grab my mind. And it was brilliant. So, my rehab was methadone, a law degree. So I was busy doing that. And but I was also I must have been, I was born in 1956, so I was 30 when I came back here, and the biological clock started to tick. So I thought, I'm never going to be a solicitor. It's not my thing. I wouldn't mind being an academic lawyer. And I got a scholarship to a Canadian university, unless I meet someone who's going to be a good father to my child. And that was the one that happened. And during the time at uni, I'd become interested in fitness. I got really super fit. And so when I had my daughter Jessica, we moved here to the country, and I started working at the gyms as a personal trainer, fitness instructor. It was a great job with a baby because they all had creches in those days. And so it was while I was doing that and wondering, why are other people not as single-minded as me? And why do people not stick? The program's simple. Why do they not? And I saw an advert that they were doing a hypnotherapy diploma in Aberdeen, which is my nearest city. And I thought, oh, that's amazing. I'll go and do that. And it was amazing and massively interesting. But I wanted to go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where the psychotherapy came in. So I did that on a modular basis over the next few years, actually. So first I was a hypnotherapist, and then I got my psychotherapy accreditation.
And then the NLP came after, I presume.
Yeah. Yeah, because they kind of put you in that direction. And I found NLP really interesting, especially in terms of training and helping people to learn new ways of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, no, I've never stopped since then. I keep,
No, well,
yeah.
I think it's amazing. And back in the day, you were the Marilyn Monroe lookalike in London, weren't you? You were the one that everybody wanted. You were the one for all the parties. You were in pop videos, weren't you?
Yeah.
And
yeah. Gosh, Soft Cell, XTC. I was on the two Ronnies list. That was like the high point in my career, because Ronnie Barker, well, both of them, Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Corbett, we met every afternoon for a week at BBC Shepherd's Bush. And because the role was as Marilyn Monroe, but I had lines.
mm-hmm.
As you can hear, I have a Scottish accent. So they wanted me to do the Marilyn voice. I'd never done that before. And Ronnie Barker coached me.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, they were great and fantastic to work with. And I don't know if anyone gets that level of coaching.
I wouldn't have thought so.
I was so honored, and I still have the DVD somewhere. And it was a Christmas special, and I still get royalties from that, amazingly, all these years
Fabulous.
later. Yeah, I mean, a few pennies now, but still, it's a nice reminder. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? How, how all these things just weave into our lives. They become this rich tapestry, don't they? That of experiences that we can share, that we can look back on. There's always something. I think in every experience, there's always some learning, isn't there? There's always some nugget that we can take
Absolutely.
Take forward.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. And I love that I have all that. And, now with my book, that it's really interesting. There's paradoxes in the book a lot. And I wrote at one point, I was a living paradox in stiletto heels. And I was working with Ken Russell, who was a very well-known British director.
Yeah.
And we were doing a commercial at Wembley Studios for Nescore coffee. I don't know if you remember, there was a coffee strike or something, and they were using, what was it, chicory in coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
Yes, I do.
So this was Nescore, which was the instant coffee. So it had this beautiful red heart-shaped bed, and the cameraman was up on a crane thing, whatever you call it, looking down, and I was in that classic Monroe pose. And I just remember I had makeup on my track marks, and they spotted it and went, cut makeup, and then sent me off through the makeup. And I, of course, went into the toilet and had another fix before they remade up my arm again. And it was just it was a moment where I was there and I looked amazing, and, filming with the top director and everything. It's such a paradox.
Yeah. Very much so. And it sort of strikes me as well as that at that time you didn't know who you were, but you had a persona to fill, Marilyn.
That's right.
Where that you've completely turned that around now, who you completely know who you are, comfortable with who you are, hence the book and everything. So you really have come full circle.
Yeah, honestly, that's exactly how I feel. And you know, I think I've had fears about it, and I think there may be difficulties with it. Some parts of the book are brutal, but I've made up my mind it needs to be heard, for all sorts of reasons. And I haven't held anything back, Les. I've really spoken my truth in it. And, you know, especially in today's cancellation cultures, there's part of that that's scary, but I think people can feel truth.
Yeah, of course they can.
And they know truth when they hear it. And I always think, well, even if I just help one person.
I think you'll help more than one person. I do. Knowing your story, I definitely do. I think it's, I mean, we've only touched on it, skirted around it, haven't we, today? But I think it's a very, very powerful, deep, harrowing, upsetting story with a happy ending.
Yeah.
You know, because you had that strength to get out of it and to turn yourself around. And I think people need to hear that and to know, because there's so much labeling of people, of conditions, but people are staying in that box. They don't think, I think that they're not feeling that they can step out of that box. They have to stay there. They have to stay as that label, where that's not the truth, is it? You can grow out of anything at any point. You can step out of it if you've got the courage to do it. And boy, did you have the courage to do that.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, and I think that's right. We are so much more.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's been for such a large part of my life. I knew who I was as something deep inside. Let's say that part. And I looked something entirely different.
Yeah.
And I projected something entirely different because that was how I made my living. But I was very puzzled about, why are people not seeing me? Why are people not getting me? And not understanding any of that. But I find that inside myself, I have this really strong determination that we need to really be who we are. And all of that is me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just one part, not just the therapist, Vicky, the Vicky who took off her clothes in the past, the Vicky that did things that I'm not too proud of, all of that. And I think that's what we're so afraid of. A lot of us are so afraid.
I agree that. And I would say with what you're doing is completely seeing, owning your shadow. You're seeing what you've done, what you're not so proud of, but you're embracing it still anyway. You accept, because it's gone, so you can't change it anyway. So to me, that embracing it and that acceptance is huge. And I bet that's why the book was so cathartic, in the fact of, this is me, shadows and all. Where most people in the well-being world, in the spiritual world, they all want to stay in this track, in the love and light track, but it isn't all about love and light, is it? There has to be shadow. If you've got light, if the sun's out, there has to be a shadow. If it's day, there has to be night. It's not something that we all want, and it's not something that we particularly enjoy, is it? But it is something that I think has to be acknowledged, because when it's not acknowledged, it's getting more power. You're giving it more power. Where if it's acknowledged, then it not dilutes it, but just negates it a bit. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. And it's I loved what you said there. It was very wise, about the wanting to stay in the light, and then the pressure to stay there for your people, and then the fear of, if I don't stay there, I'll get pulled off my pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many stories of gurus who went a bit wrong
Oh yeah.
because of that
Yeah.
exact
Yeah.
thing. So I think when we own our shadows in that way, be as real as we possibly can be, it's just that giving permission, isn't it, to everybody else to do the same.
Yes.
Because if we try to hide it, our lives won't be great.
No, and I think, well, exactly. It's, I always remember, can you remember Debbie Ford?
No.
Oh, look at her. She's amazing, American lady. And she likened the emotions to like big beach balls, big inflatable beach balls. And you're in a swimming pool with all trying to hold all these under the water to look at me, I'm perfect, all's good here, nothing to see here. And poof, these balls are flying up out because we can't control, you know, the emotions will burst out. These things will burst out. We're not perfect. We're not here to be perfect. But I think we're made to believe that we are. And like with the press, the media, it's all about being exactly what you've just said, building somebody up, putting them on that pedestal. They seem to take the pleasure in building them up, putting them on the pedestal, and then finding a flaw and pick until the pedestal crumbles.
That's right. Yeah, it's all very public now. Oh, you're right.
Yeah. It's and that must be very difficult to deal with.
Yes.
You know, there's the pressures in day-to-day life, but to actually be out and having that from that angle as well, to people who don't even know you.
I know. Yeah, I find that all very scary, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I totally see that. Yeah. So we're coming to the end of our time. So what I always like to ask, I've got so much more I want to ask you, but I think we'll have to have you back. There's the whole Egyptian connection I want to go, but we'll leave that for a whole episode, I think. But what I would like to ask you is, what would you say is your non-negotiable self-care for you on a daily basis?
Mother Nature.
Yeah,
in touch with that.
And you live in such a beautiful spot that you're there, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I think that's been where I live has really been the key to retaining my sanity through all this last 30 years. I just need to look outside and see the ever-changing beauty of the hills, the trees, and it's so nurturing.
Yeah, I totally get that. And what advice, if you could pick 3 pieces of advice that you now could give to younger you, so that you that didn't know who you were, that you that was trying to fit in, what advice would you give to her now from the wisdom you have now?
I would say, Vicky, speak to someone. There were lots of people who cared. I didn't know how to approach opening that subject. And I think sometimes when we're in the darkest places, that's the time that we hide from people whom we should be reaching out. If I could have taken myself out of the crazy and onto a beach somewhere.
Yeah, just removed yourself from the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I said to her, it's not your fault.
That's a biggie, isn't it?
Yeah.
That really is a big one. And I think I can remember somebody saying that to me, and the wave of emotion I got with that, hearing that, and it didn't fully sink in to start with, but the feeling did. My body knew it, just my mind was a little bit. But then over like a couple of weeks or so, that sort of filtered down, and it is such a powerful statement.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is. Yeah.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much for joining me. I could talk to you for days, and we'll definitely have you back when the book comes out.
Brilliant.
And I'd love to hear about, like I said at the beginning of the chapters of the book, about the Egyptian thing, because that really, from the beginning, that pulled me, and I was like, oh, I really like this. So I'd like to hear more about that as well at a later date, if that suits you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a few things I'd like to say to you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
We'll have to do a live from Varkla, won't we?
Yeah. Or maybe from Egypt.
Yes. I haven't been. Can you believe that?
Oh,
You're going
no.
to take me?
But also, I haven't been since 2010. And I have this promise to myself to go back. I always used to stay on for a holiday when I did a tour. I'd take a couple of weeks to myself on the beach somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But this time I'd like to take some time in the temples quietly on my own and just
Yes.
see what seeps through.
Yes. Oh, wow. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. I think you need to get that booked. That could be your reward next year.
Well, it could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a bad
Looking
idea.
for yeah. I think definitely. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm so grateful that you've joined us today. And guys, I'm going to put all the details of Vicky in the show notes, her website, her books. She's on YouTube. There's lots of great information out there about her, and I'll pop that below. So thank you for joining us, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.
Thank you, Liz. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye.